Samantha Raddock is a certified sexual intimacy specialist, sex educator, and trauma-informed coach who survived cancer and emerged with a new purpose. She trained at the Tantra Institute of Integrated Sexuality and the Somatica Institute and is recognized by the American Board of Psychology as a certified sex, love, and relationship coach. Following a cancer diagnosis and subsequent treatment, Samantha's illness gave her first-hand knowledge of both disheartening sexual side effects and the interruption of intimacy that many people often feel for any multitude of reasons. She blends leading neuroscience research with holistic body-based modalities to help people of all sexual preferences and orientations improve their sexual health, deepen intimate relationships, and enable impactful personal growth. With her foundation rooted in feminist inquiry and sex-positive education, she examines how pornography and media shape our perceptions of desire, consent, and identity. Samantha challenges conventional narratives, advocates for ethical sexual expression, and inspires nuanced conversations about the evolving dynamics of intimacy and power. Oh, my goodness, there was a lot there. You've done a heck of a lot, and you have been through a heck of a lot. So I'm just going to dive in if that's okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I should have said you're very welcome. Thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
I wanted to take you back a little bit and just understand a bit about your formative years and just really would the person you were in your early teenage years recognize the person you are today?
Yeah, so I mean, I was a really precocious teenager, like really outgoing and sassy, and I needed a lot of attention. Not that dissimilar to how I am now. And I wonder, like I would say the teenage me would recognize the current me. I think internally, and I mean this because I think I'm closer now to my most authentic self than I've been almost in my entire adult life. And sort of in your teenage years where you're finding out who you are. I think that is my internal monologue as a teenager, like sort of figuring myself out, my wants and my desires and my needs. You develop, or I'm generalizing, but people develop a mask over time that they build over their selves. And I've gotten back to myself kind of now in my 40s. So I think that my teenage self would totally recognize me and like be super psyched that I emerged this way, I think. Yeah.
What was your relationship like back then with whatever you define intimacy to be? How were you with your body, with your sexuality, with your desires? Were you educated? Was your family very open? How were you at that age?
I was not, my family we weren't super strict or religious, and they certainly were not like anti-sex, but they also weren't pro-sex. It was sort of just a taboo subject that you didn't talk about.
Yeah.
So I wasn't super educated. I sort of had to figure out my body on my own, as most teenagers do, unfortunately, still. And yeah, I just think, puberty and teenage years are full of angst. Like they're super messy, physically, emotionally. I think back then I was, again, in a position that a lot of teenagers are now still, where I felt very alone, like sort of figuring out my body by myself, figuring out my sexuality by myself. Kind of didn't feel comfortable asking a lot of questions. So yeah, I think that it was, again, I feel like it was sort of a middle of the road experience. It wasn't crazy strict or I wasn't super scared, but I also didn't feel like I had any options, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It still surprises me, I guess, talking to my children who are sort of late teens now,
Uh-huh.
that it doesn't feel that much in the UK that sex ed's moved on that much.
Yeah.
So when I was at school, it was pretty much STDs, how to put a condom on a banana, always useful,
Same.
and a little bit about consent, which is good. My children now say there's a lot more about consent now, which I think is fabulous. But there's still nothing about the intimacy and the feeling side of things still. And I don't know why we have this fear of talking about sex and money. They're the two things we don't talk about.
I
And
know.
both of them are quite important in very different ways. And I just feel that things would be quite different if we talked about things more openly.
I agree. I agree. I think that there's such a taboo around it, and I mean, for me, the same thing. Sex ed was, don't get an STD, don't get pregnant, right?
Yes.
Like that was it. I didn't learn. I mean, maybe we learned for a hot second about some anatomy, but barely. I learned about fallopian tubes, like internal anatomy,
Exactly.
but like I didn't learn about my body. I didn't learn about the anatomy of a female, the anatomy of a male. I didn't learn about intimacy for sure. And certainly back then, I did not learn about consent. But I kind of wish that we would teach sex ed. I mean, this is like still slightly controversial, but I wish that we would teach people how to masturbate. Like, I wish that we would just, really openly teach people about self-love and self-pleasure. I think that it would really help teenagers, like, if you really love, teenagers don't love themselves. It's so hard. And I feel like if we taught them about how to touch their own bodies and really love their own bodies, it would really teach them in turn how to love other people and like and their partners and emotional and intimate connections. I just think that is like a really good foundation, which we do certainly in America, we do not
No.
that at all. Yeah.
It's fascinating you say that. So one of the first people I spoke to when I started doing this was I'm trying to think how she defines herself. She's a somatic coach and a Tantra expert guide, we call it.
Mhm.
And she said one of the issues is that we're taught very early on that a lot of times that sex is dirty, or because as young boys in particular, we like to spend a lot of time with our hands down our trousers. It's just
Yeah. Yeah.
comforting, and then your hand gets sort of slapped, or no, don't do that. And she said exactly the same thing. I said, look, how? No, she said, have you ever spent an hour or 2 hours on your own, just examining your own body, how it feels, and everything? And I said, as for mid-50s man, no, I haven't, because masturbation was always something very hurried. And the fear that someone's going to come and knock on the door, I'm like, God, the terrible fear of
Yeah.
that. The slight feeling of that sort of Catholic guilt in a way, I guess. And she said that's the thing. There's some crazy stat, something like 40% of women have never looked at their own vulva
Oh,
in a minute.
yeah. I think it actually might be
What?
more.
It just horrifies. I mean, for men, we can see it. It's there. It's dangling down there. It's what it is. But yeah, if we don't understand what feels nice and what doesn't feel nice, then it's very hard to explain our desires to somebody else. So I totally agree with that. But
Yeah.
yeah, I might suggest it to the headmaster when I next see him. Teacher, I was talking to Samantha and she said, "Yeah, okay."
I'm
So
like,
from
I'd
that
like
sort
to
of
come over to the UK to teach that. I'm happy to do it.
fabulous, I'll put the two of you in contact. So from that sort of middle ground, middle of the road, not good, not bad, sort of teenage years regarding sexuality, sensuality. What was the pathway from that to becoming a writer, research, eminently qualified sexual intimacy specialist? And why did you feel that was your career calling, I guess?
Yeah. So, well, honestly, my entry into this field was sort of, I mean, it was deeply personal first. Um,
Mhm.
I was working in a totally different field and I was on my own journey of sexual discovery, sort of. I had been working with somatic sex educators first that I had found on my own, and started reading a lot of books and I was very interested in learning about this because, again, this is not something I had learned about in my life. And I sort of, even as an adult, didn't really know my body enough. And really, didn't feel like I was super connected with my sexuality. And so I had started researching just on my own out of curiosity. And then I was diagnosed with cancer. And I mean, that changed everything. I went through chemotherapy and chemotherapy, I'm going off on a little bit of a tangent, but it really leaves you with a lot of besides all the other things that happen to your body, if you're just talking about sex and sexuality and your connection with your sexual self, it's really fragmented. After chemotherapy, there's a lot of side effects that happen as a result of the medication. And I felt kind of abandoned by the system in that regard. There's not really any support for post-cancer or post-chemo sexual wellness. And that silence felt kind of unacceptable to me. And it just sort of lit a fire in me. And I was like, I don't know why that's disregarded, this kind of idea that, oh, well, we've cured you of your cancer. They don't say cure, but you no longer have cancer, and everything else is sort of for you to figure out, right? It doesn't actually matter, when it does matter. I mean, for me, my sexual self is my personal self, and that's like my life force energy, and it felt super deadened. And so that is sort of how I made the jump. And I said, this is it. I went from talking about it sometimes to talking about it all the time. And this is what I want to do with my life. And that's sort of how I propelled myself into this as a career, is from my cancer diagnosis and treatment and just sort of lack of care in that department. Yeah.
So when you finished the chemo and they sort of said, okay, well, we can no longer find any sign of the cancer, or whatever words they use, are you left then with residual physical effects that affect your libido or your ability to have sex or whatever?
I'm sorry, I was talking over you. What did you say?
No, sorry, I was just going to say, well, yeah, does that leave you with sort of physical effects that either affect your libido or your ability to have sex? What effects
so
does that have?
definitely yes.
Okay.
Especially with females, when you go through chemotherapy, your body is, what they say, pushed into chemical menopause, they call it. And that is essentially a forced menopausal state where your body sort of atrophies, right? Chemo is very drying to your system. So your vaginal walls sort of shrink and dry up, and sex becomes extremely painful. And that in and of itself, right, was a huge deal. But you also are left, you're left with a host of side effects that are not necessarily sexual in nature, but bodily in nature, that you are coming to terms with this sort of new body that you're learning to work with post chemo. And anyone who's been through that knows that it's a sort of bizarre, kind of out of body experience where you're like, I have this new body now, right, that I'm working with, and has all these new little nuanced ailments and things that are really hard to bring back online. And I had mentioned this to my oncologist afterwards, after I had finished my treatment. And there's certainly a long time after you go through treatment till you're back to quote unquote normal. You're never really back to full normal, but I had mentioned these sexual side effects, and he's a great doctor, and I can't even blame him, because this is the way they were trained in Western medicine. But he was like, oh, a sexual issue, talk to your gynecologist. And like, it was just like, you have a problem with your eyes, talk to an ophthalmologist. You have a problem with your, it was sort of farmed out as everything was a separate sort of entity. And it no longer had anything to do with my cancer. Yeah.
It's very hard, and it brings me to something that I've really believed for quite a while now, that we sort of carry with us a definition of sex as being penis and vagina. Typically, that is sex.
Yeah.
And from the fact that sex can literally be kissing, holding, stroking, massaging, what it can be, this whole gamut of things that are sex. And we do it to ourselves, because we think of the word foreplay. All right, so that comes before the sex. We'll do this. For how long is it for? 5 minutes, okay.
Yeah.
Then get into the sex, and it's really weird. So when you're sort of saying like, "Gosh, sex felt different," it's just helping people understand that perhaps you didn't want penetration, perhaps you just wanted holding or stroking or kissing or tasting or whatever. That's one of the challenges. I think that we have this, this sort of belief from school, from wherever, from the internet, from wherever we learn it, that sex is that particular act. If you don't do that, for men, if we don't ejaculate, we've not had sex.
Mm.
And it's really, it's hard. And how did you find with you don't have to answer this, but how did you find with um, partners? Because I must admit, if my girlfriend, lover, wife, whatever, had cancer, I'd be very hesitant, and I don't know why. I don't know why. I have no reason for that, because I'd be oh my gosh, is this gonna? I don't know what what it could possibly do.
Yeah.
Is me kissing you, holding you, and it's stupid to think that way. But I'd be hesitant to have sex with somebody until I knew it was absolutely right and they were ready and all that sort of stuff. How do you communicate to somebody else that, okay, this is what I need and this is what I want in the moment?
Yeah. Well, first of all, it sounds stupid to think that, right? People who have gone through an experience like that are really vulnerable, both
Mm.
physically and emotionally,
Hmm.
right? So it's not, I mean, that's a beautiful thing to be concerned with if this would hurt or how it would feel or
Mm.
get ready, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, my personal experience, I'm married and my husband was my caretaker through my illness. So he saw firsthand what I was going through. So he let me lead the
Yeah.
reintroduction of intimacy back
Hmm.
into the space or rather we've always been intimate, but the reintroduction of our physical bodies connecting was very much led by me. And if I'm being honest, it takes a lot of patience, and it was a trial and error kind of process, and just like trying things and they didn't work and then we'd have to wait and do other things. It was really, I mean,
Yeah.
honestly, not dissimilar from like going through sex when you're a teenager
Yeah.
for the first time and figuring
Yeah.
stuff out, right? It was sort of like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So do you have a hope that part of the cancer journey and communication education includes sex
Oh,
and the impact it has? Would that be an ideal vision of the future?
oh, yeah. I mean, ideally it would be a whole body, holistic
Yeah.
approach where you're like, once you are done with treatment, the
Hmm.
problem again, and I'm speaking just from the US because that's where I was treated, that it's you deal with the oncology team and then you are sort of let go, right? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
you're I mean, you're not let go. You obviously go back for checkups and things, but in terms of like their care in the moment, and ideally they would have like a handoff system to a whole other department where they're like, okay, you finished this crazy time, you're in remission officially.
Mm.
Now let's help you get your body back to where you feel
Yeah.
some semblance of normalcy, and to have a support system with that, whether it be doctors or nurses or even like acupuncturists or somatic educators or whatever
Yeah.
it is, right? To have a whole team, I mean, that would be just the dream. To have, just to be sort of handed off seamlessly, like, this is what we do now. You finish your rounds of chemo, now we put you here. And you do
Yeah.
this until you feel ready to kind of enter back into the world. That would
Mm.
I mean, that would be wonderful.
Because there is a big difference. I mean, just from hearing you talk, between cancer not being present anymore and living a new life.
Yeah.
The two, it's not right. You don't have cancer anymore. I go, well, bye. Come for a checkup in a year's time. That's there. What? Oh,
Yeah.
what do I just? I just carry on then, do I? I can, and yeah, because you want to know about nutrition, exercise, sex, intimacy, all of those things, because that's part of how you live next. And it's and I don't actually think it's just cancer. I think it's lots of
Oh,
things
for
that
sure.
ail people. It just doesn't get talked about. Like I said, either it's seen as a physical thing, so see the gynecologist, or it's psychological things, see the psychiatrist. Okay,
Yeah.
but not a sort of natural. And it really just needs to be somebody that has, well, you really, somebody that has experience in this field, and can just have the conversation. It doesn't necessarily need to be another doctor or a consultant or anything. It needs to be
No.
somebody that can talk about life, really.
Yeah, I agree with you. I feel like I was very fortunate because I got sick in the time of the internet.
Yes.
Because I do not think I would have made it through both my treatment and my recovery without the people online. Like, there's support groups online of people all over the world that are going through the
Mm.
same thing. I mean, they're very niche, right? You can find someone who had the
Yeah.
exact same type of cancer and the exact
Yeah.
same type of chemo and the exact same age and the exact same demographic and all of that. And I really leaned on this support group. So many questions answered, so many people going through the same thing. That was so helpful. And it was all on me to find, right? And so while I'm grateful that
Mm.
these support groups exist, really, really immensely grateful. I wish that they were offered as a point of care
Yeah.
to start. Yeah.
Yeah. Just so you mentioned the internet there, just to take us somewhere
Yeah.
completely different. Um, so the internet's done a lot of amazing things, and it's also allowed us to access information, knowledge, visual media in an incredibly straightforward manner. So I'm not trying to beat about the bush, but so research shows that I think boys typically first see porn online at the age of 12, which is a long way before they understand what relationships really are. And I just wondered, and I guess I contrast that with my sort of 15-year-old self that show my age completely, but pornography was literally a magazine centerfold. I was like, oh my
Mhm.
god, that woman's got no clothes on. Oh my god,
Yeah.
and that was so exciting and so, oh my god, where are we going to hide it? God, my parents ever see that? Oh my god. Whereas now, you pick up your phone and you can literally find anything and everything. And I just wondered, it's a big question, but how do you think mainstream, and I differentiate that from holistic or feminist porn, which is some beautiful. There's some beautiful porn out there. I'm not against porn, but
Yeah.
how do you think the sort of mainstream, I guess, clips of porn influence young people's understanding of desire, intimacy, and we talked about it before, consent?
Yeah, so that's really nuanced. I'm not anti-porn either. Um, I think it has a place and can really help some people
Hmm.
figure out their desires or connect with what they want, or feel less alone in their
Yeah.
fantasies, etc. Um, I do also think that 12 is way too early, before kids understand relationships or emotional connection. Because at that age, it is really hard to separate fantasy from reality and kind of
Mhm.
discern what feels right from what feels just available. Um, yeah, so porn can create like unrealistic expectations. Um, and I see this firsthand with clients. I deal with a lot of clients who have an experience when they're young that feels misaligned from what their life is like now, and it affects how they connect. It affects how they show up. Um, so yeah, early exposure shapes like a lot of distorted ideas of what intimacy should look like. Um, but yeah, I think that again, like, it's really hard. It's really prevalent in our society, and I think we need to lean on sort of teaching more about uh, what real intimacy looks like, right? Outside
Yeah.
of porn, right? Like there's, I feel like there needs to be sort of a pendulum swing, because, this community, this porn community, this porn world, this easy access, while I think there are a lot of issues with it, I also think that we can't ignore that that's the way our society is going and media is
Yeah.
going, etc. So instead of fighting that, I more feel like we should just lean into education and show people what it really is like in real life so that they can better discern what is real from what is curated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I very much agree. I mean, I think if you're, I'm sure there are many campaigns to sort of ban porn, etc., which it's never going to happen. I mean, I think the last month, I think Pornhub alone got 4 billion hits.
Yeah.
That's quite a lot. That's quite a lot of people that clicked on it by mistake. It's it's out there, and I think, and the one thing just bringing it back to us with my son when he was all 13 or whatever, was just to try and talk to him about it and explain that not every woman is completely hairless apart from the top of her head.
Mm.
Not every woman wants to be with 2 or 3 men at a time. Not every, and,
Yeah.
just trying to explain that this is, and I've talked to people that create porn, directors and actresses and things, and they said they really enjoy what they do, the people I've talked to, but they say, look, we fully intend it to be entertainment. We don't want it to be, it's not educational. We know it's not an educator, but it is entertainment. If you think of it in that way, it's like you watch a mainstream film, you don't believe it's real. You don't believe that Tom Cruise is really a sort of secret agent spy. But,
Yeah.
and again, with porn, it's just trying to explain that intimacy is very different from what you're watching. And you can see with most porn, there's not an intimate connection. Consent isn't generally discussed in any mainstream porn, which is really hard. And it's just to explain that things are different. But I think a lot of parents, unfortunately, are nervous to have those conversations. A lot of schools don't want to have those conversations. But if you don't have them, your child is going to learn from watching pornography or talking to his friends. That's simple as that. So you've got two choices: either have the conversation, feel a bit embarrassed, or don't, and just it might make this very uncomfortable for a future partner or whatever. So I think we've got responsibility as carers, parents, aunts, uncles, educators, just to try and have a conversation with people about these things.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, like you said before, I mean, I wish people talked about sex with the ease with which we talk about the weather, you know?
Yeah,
Don't
yeah,
I don't really understand. I mean, I do understand the cultural and societal history behind why this
yeah,
has become so taboo, but I really think that we need to talk about it more openly and more frequently. And I do believe that the more we as a culture, as a society, as countries can really make it less
hmm,
scary to talk
yeah,
about and embarrassing to talk about, the more that we can then point out that porn is just entertainment, right?
yeah,
So people have something to compare it to. But right
mm,
now, we're so stuck in this way of like we don't talk about it, and then therefore the only place that people can go to, especially young kids, is porn.
yeah.
It's a self.
Absolutely, you're pushing them back to the place you're trying to get them away from. You
Yeah.
can't say, "Well, I'm on your phone," or "I'll check your phone," whatever. Believe me, 13, 14-year-old boy can get around
Oh,
anything on his phone that I could put on there. So don't assume
yeah.
that.
And teenagers, we were teenagers once. If you tell
Absolutely,
a teenager not to do something, that is the first thing they're going to do.
yes,
Right? So it's
100%.
like by banning all of this stuff, by making it not allowed or taboo or
Mm,
weird to talk about, it just makes them more interested and it just makes them seek it out more, which is
definitely.
totally natural. So just talk about it more,
Yeah,
make it less
yeah.
odd, out of the ordinary. Yeah.
Do you find that some of the people that come to talk to you, it's because of entrenched learning from much earlier parts of their life?
Yes.
Okay.
100%. Most people, honestly, this is true of all humans, a lot of our desires and wants when it comes to sexuality are
Mhm.
really cemented in experiences we had as children. And I'm not even talking about necessarily sexual experience.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, just, in attachment and longings and love and affection and intimacy with caregivers, your parents, or and we really kind of build these ideas in our head that, and in our nervous systems, essentially, that shape the way that we exist in sexuality. Because at the end of the day, we all just want love and care and compassion that can manifest in different ways and look different ways. I say, I deal with clients all the time who are just really confused by their desires. You can have a woman who, like using your example from porn, right, who wants to have sex with 4 men at once. And really, when you distill it down, it just means she wants like a lot of attention and care, right? But it manifests in this a way that looks differently than that for her, or might seemingly look differently than that, right? And I think that's true for all people. So a lot of people, one of the first things I do with people, one is getting them in touch with their body, getting them connected to their bodies and their sexuality. And 2 is figuring out what their core desires really mean, what they're really looking to feel. Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know if that answers your question entirely.
No, it does, and I again, I completely agree. I mean, I've talked to people before about fantasies, and some people get very, very confused by the fantasies that they have, but exactly as you said, very, very often people are very comfortable keeping a fantasy as a fantasy.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean, I mean, if I fantasize about wanting to sleep with another woman, what it perhaps means is that there's something in my sex life that I might want to change or adjust, or perhaps maybe we want to role play something, or meet my wife in a hotel and we don't know who each other are, or pick my wife up in a bar or whatever.
Yeah.
It's not actually saying that I want to go and have sex with another woman. But I think one of the challenges, I think, over the course of a relationship, and it could be a month, it could be 6 months, it could be 16 years. It doesn't really matter how long it is. But I think maybe at the beginning we figure out what we're both like, and we sort of fall maybe into that sort of pattern. But then over the course of time, our desires or wants might diverge from one another but we don't ever talk about it. So I might have a desire to be, I'd like to be more submissive, or I'd like to be tied up, or I'd like to tie my wife up, or whatever. And because it's something that hasn't come up before, there's that real hesitancy to actually talk about it for 2 reasons. One, you don't want your partner to say, "Oh, you're a pervert," or to laugh, or to storm off.
Yeah.
And how do you advise people or help people to have that conversation? It might not even be that conversation, but how do you bring them back to communicating again a bit more? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it really helps to know, like I'm saying, to first to learn what those desires mean for you.
Okay.
Because the more that you can connect with what those desires mean for you, then you can express it in a way that isn't just like, oh, I want, like you said, I want you to tie me up, or I want to go sleep with another woman. And by the way, maybe you want to go sleep with another woman just because you want to sleep with another woman. And like,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
That's fine too, depending on the terms of your marriage agreement. But I think it becomes easier to share things that might otherwise be considered taboo, or fetishes, or kinks that aren't quote unquote standard or normal, when you understand why you want those things in the first place, right?
Yes.
Not just, oh, I want to be tied up because it feels that turns me on. Like, of course it turns you on. Why does it turn you on? Do you want to feel held? Do you want to feel desired? Do you want to feel needed? Do you want to feel so important that they can't let you go? Right? I mean, these are all different, and it could be different. There's myriad reasons, and it could be different for everyone, right? One person might want to be tied up because they want to feel desired. One person want to be tied up because they want it changes, obviously. So I think when people can really figure out what the desire means to them, how they want to feel, it's easier to communicate, to say, I want to feel so desired that you need me so badly that you won't let me leave, right? And to say that to a partner as opposed to like, will you tie me up? Right? It comes from a much more connected, embodied place, and then it's easier to share.
I've never ever thought of it that way.
Yeah.
And how do you figure out? Because when you're saying it sounds so rational. It's like, well, will you tie me up? What? And then, but you just think about the physical thing about being tied up. It's okay. I'm tied up. Okay,
Yeah.
but it must, the desire for that must be because I want to be completely in your control or completely desired or whatever. And I don't know why I've never thought of that. It's just anyway. But how do you figure out what feeling you're looking for? I guess,
Yeah,
or
that's
what it means to you.
yeah. So, well, that is, part of my session work that I do
Hmm.
with people. So that does not happen. Sometimes it happens really quickly, right? We can tap into that, no problem. But more often than not, it is several sessions of work on really digging into what this thing they want is making them feel. I mean, it's really very specific to the person. And sometimes we have to dig deep down to inner child work and, what feelings you were missing as a kid or whatever. I mean, it's just so specific to the person that
Mm.
it's hard to really give a general
Yeah.
rule, but it's just doing a lot of internal work, doing a lot of somatic work where you connect to your nervous system, and kind of quiet down and listen to what your body is telling you. And that's done through a plethora of experimental exercises that I do with clients. Yeah.
And can you sort of see when the client suddenly has that? That's what it is.
Yeah,
It must
that
be.
happens. Yeah.
It must be really exciting when you've like say you've had a couple of sessions, 3 or 4 sessions, and you sort of suddenly the person just it must just well, lift the weight from them, and it must bring them a very different feeling than I want to be tied up.
Yeah, I mean, it's so great. Then you're all of a sudden like, oh my God. And usually, more often than not, it's people have a lot of shame around their
Yeah.
desires, a lot of shame. And once you connect to why you want the thing, it's almost like, the shame can really lift because it's like, oh, now I understand why I want this thing. I'm not, people will call themselves like gross or dirty or strange or
Mm.
whatever word you want to use, but there's so much shame that we attach to our fantasies and our desires. And when you can really tie it to kind of just this feeling, usually a feeling is always, a really base feeling that you like, a need that you were missing as a child or as a young adult or something like that you're really looking for from someone else. It can really remove a lot of that shame. And when the shame is removed, it's a whole new ball game, right? People are really become a lot more comfortable expressing their desires when shame has been lifted. Yeah.
And I think a lot of that, I think, and tell me if I'm wrong, but comes down to sort of mainstream media as well. So forget about porn altogether, and you think about it, within the same magazine or the same website or the same news site, you can have two seemingly completely contrasting stories. One is might be pictures of beautiful people half naked or whatever, and talking very sexually about all sorts of stuff. Then you turn over the page and it's suddenly it's sort of shaming people for doing certain things. And you think, well, if you're reading it, you're looking at, well, okay, this is good. I should be doing this. Oh my god, that's terrible. That's very shameful.
Yeah.
So how on earth do you navigate your way through that? Is that just about understanding yourself more and more?
Yeah, I think that, again, because pop culture has such a huge influence on how we view
Mm.
sex, I think that it really comes down again to education,
Hmm.
um, and teaching people about their bodies, normalizing desires, normalizing intimacy, normalizing sexual expression, and being mindful of the fact that this is a process that it for most people. But I think also the teaching people to connect to their bodies and to their arousal energy creates a safety in your body
Mhm.
that makes you more comfortable with yourself and less likely to be influenced by outside sources, right? And you know this just as a
Yeah.
human, as you grow older, like the more comfortable you are in your body, the less you care about what other people think or what other people tell
Yeah.
you to do or whatever the case is, right? The more comfortable you are with your body, yourself, your mind, the way you go about in the world, the easier it is to kind of filter out all the noise.
Mm.
Yeah.
It is crazy. I look back and think as a, I don't know, 15-year-old kid or whatever, why don't you just ask her out? Just ask her. What
Yeah.
she might say no, then move on to the next one. It doesn't. But oh my god, at the time, just the absolute mortifying fear of being
Terror.
turned down for a date to go to the cinema or to the prom or whatever. Just something just for coffee. I don't know what it would have been then, not coffee, whatever, milkshake or something.
Sure.
It's like, oh my god! But looking back now, I think, oh my god, you wasted so much time. and who knows what could have happened or it might not have happened, but at least you would have known. But yeah, holding on to these things because the fear of asking and being refused was almost worse than the possibility somebody might say yes in a way. So that fear of losing out far outweighed the possibility of winning something. But yeah, as we get older, hopefully we do get more confident and comfortable and recognize that it's just a passing moment, isn't it? It doesn't it okay, move on.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, as youngsters we certainly don't feel that, which is it's just sad.
It is sad. Yeah.
Did you find that when you went through the cancer treatment and came out the other side, thankfully, that your ability to connect with your own body was a big part of how you restored your desire and increase your intimacy levels afterwards?
Yeah,
Okay.
for sure. I mean, it flipped my whole relationship with my body on its head. And I did have to like relearn how to use my body. And I really had to have a lot of patience with myself. In the beginning, it was very hard. I was not patient. You know, I went through this ordeal. I finished chemotherapy. It was the absolute worst time of my life. It was brutal and soul crushing and body crushing. And then I was finished and I was like, let's go, you know, get back to life. You know, also like I'm a New York City girl and I, you know, go, right? I didn't want to waste any time.
Yeah.
And I really had to slow down and offer myself some grace and be very patient. And I found that the way that I ultimately sort of reconnected with my body was through gratitude. Like thanking my body for enduring this pretty insane experience and living to see another day. And really, once I really felt this sense of gratitude for my body kind of holding me and helping me through and being strong enough to get me through that
Mm.
experience, once I sunk into that gratitude, I found a whole new connection to myself and intimacy with myself first that I really needed in order to kind of push past.
So you think your perspective on intimacy post cancer is very different than it was pre cancer?
I think Yeah, I think so. I think
Mhm.
it's again, that is also nuance. Like I think that
Yeah.
I actually no, I think that my experience of my body is almost better now just because of the of the experience of feeling like I'm not part of my body, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah,
When you go through
yeah.
chemotherapy, there is some time. I remember moments where I would say, I don't know what's happening, but I feel like I've been abducted. Like my body is not mine.
Hmm.
And I don't know what's happening to me, but my body's not. I would say a lot like this body isn't mine. Someone else has taken over. And so once I kind of reestablished that connection, I feel like it was much stronger, and there was much more of a, oh, this is the way that you can connect with your body and really walk around connected, more aware of the connection more often.
Mm.
Yeah,
So do you still practice gratitude today?
I do. Yeah, I do. If I'm being honest, not as often, but that is
Hmm.
the nature of life, right?
Yeah,
The further you get away from some experience, you don't make a habit of it.
yeah.
But I definitely do. I am reminded of my experience often. I meditate daily. I do practice gratitude daily. So, and more often than not, I am grateful for my body for like, bringing me to this new day. Yeah.
Mm. And that, yeah, I guess that links to, but you sort of part answered it, I guess. But so obviously with a lot of your clients, people you deal with, they're probably not coming to you saying, "Oh, Samantha, I just wanted to book an appointment to tell you how wonderful my life is. I just wanted to let you know it's great and no issues, but yeah, thanks very much. Here's $100 or whatever." They're typically coming to you when they feel something is wrong or amiss or out of sync, or for reasons that they're not quite feeling who they want to be. How do you? Because you're obviously giving a lot of yourself in terms of what you've been through, so you're very much giving more than anybody else I can think of what you've been through and your experience and your knowledge and your learning. But you don't want to carry their trauma around with you. So how do you not necessarily avoid that, but how do you nourish and protect your own mental and physical well-being then?
Hmm. I think that it's more about, I learned, especially like in my training,
Hmm.
uh, a big part of my training was how to take care of yourself, right? Because you're
Okay.
working with so many people who are bringing
Yeah.
their trauma and their the big emotions, et cetera. And I
Hmm.
want to be able to hold that. So this kind of taking care of myself, which is very, um, it's a personal journey, right? For me, I meditate, I dance, I journal, and that works for me. And for everyone, it's very different, right? So that's, I keep myself whole in that way. But again, yeah, I always want to point out that like someone might never want to meditate, and that's also okay, right? Or they may never want to journal, and that's also okay. Some people go for a run, some people
Yeah.
spend time in nature, whatever it is. But finding those things that really make you
Hmm.
feel grounded within yourself, I think are really important. So those are some things that I do that really work for me.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, it's really good that you say that. 'Cause a lot of people I talk to are almost very much, you got to meditate, got to be breath work, and everyone has their own little thing. But I think it's my wife runs, and that's her thing. I couldn't bear to run, and my knees would fall apart, I think. But yeah, I think each person has their own thing. As long as you recognize it for what it is, that it's about nourishing yourself sort of mentally, physically, all those things. That's what it's really about, I guess. So what are you working on at the moment? So one of the things that I really like was that you back up everything you say with a lot of research. So you're nerdy in the best possible way in
Yeah.
terms of research and data, but they're very good areas now going in terms of your communication style. So what are the areas you'd like to explore more or that excite you about the future for what you're doing?
Yeah. So, right now I'm really, because this is very personal to me, I'm super interested in work around sexuality and perimenopause, which is
Yes.
a massively underfunded and understudied area, even though it affects
Yeah.
half of the population, at least at one point in their lives. Um,
Mm.
so, yeah, I think there's a lot of amazing people doing great work around this, and I think it's really important that we talk about it, especially because women of a certain age are deemed, unneeded, if you will, by society, right? They can no longer have children, and then let's not listen to what they have to say, or whatever the case is, right? So I'm really interested in that, and how perimenopause affects female-bodied people and their desire and their libido and their sexuality, etc. So that's a field that I'm really interested in. I'm doing a lot of research on and working with a lot of people around. I'm also really loving pushing the edges of how we view intimacy and relationships. And so in terms of non-traditional relationship structure or relationship design, non-monogamy, polyamory, open relationships, things like that, I think these fringe ideas are very slowly making their way to mainstream. And that is something that I'm passionate about as well, just helping people feel comfortable in their desires for relationships that are non-traditional. So those things are really things that I'm working on, things that get me excited. And then I'm also, shameless plug, I'm working on a podcast myself with my husband, actually, who is not a sex educator. He is a total layman. And it's a sort of question and answer podcast where people call in and ask questions, sex related, love related, intimacy, relationship, etc. But I forget sometimes that not everyone knows all the things that I know. Right. Because this.
No, absolutely, yeah. And even I, through this is my, I don't know, 70th or 80th podcast recording. When I talk to people now, I sort of think, oh gosh, yeah, we don't normally talk about anal sex and polyamory down the pub, do we, with our friends? It just comes out. We're so used to talking about it now.
Yeah, even so far,
my wife looks at me and she's like, "Oh God, Andrew." Yeah, which is good. I mean, then people will then talk about it. Oh, why are you asking about that? But
yeah. So it's I forget, even down to the anatomy of the penis or the vulva or whatever it is, and I forget that people don't know this. So my husband is there, and what's interesting is I'll start to answer a question, and then he'll be like, "Wait a minute, hold on, what?"
Yeah.
What does this mean? What does that mean? What are you talking about? And it's kind of, so we have a banter where it's kind of nice to
I like that.
hear, his perspective as the layman, if you will, someone who is you are crazy. What are you talking about? Please expound upon that more, where I otherwise might not have if I was just answering by myself. So it's a fun kind of dynamic in how we're doing that, and that we're working on that now. So it should be a few more months before that comes out, which is great.
Well, has it got a name yet?
Yeah, it's called Love and the Layman.
Nice.
Yeah.
Was he a willing volunteer?
He was. It was sort of happened by accident, but really because I was going through some of my answers to these questions, and it was like, I have questions about your answers.
Yes.
And
it's like anything though, isn't it? If you talk to somebody that's a coder, a mechanic, a top chef, the way they talk about things, well, what does it mean? I've no idea what broil means or saute or anything. You explain to me. Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's how it sort of came about, but I'm really excited about that.
I think those two topics, I think, have come up a lot with people I talk to, and I think they are so important. I mean, just so for perimenopause, menopause in the UK, just so people don't think the UK is any better. So the typical thing that happens here is a woman of a certain age will go to the doctors, and the doctor will typically say, okay, you can go on HRT or not. This is the HRT that I'll give you, and here's some patches, and here's some tablets, and seriously, that's it.
Yeah,
that's it.
Similar here.
And then you don't even get, and then you either think is this right? Is this wrong? And then as a partner of somebody going through perimenopause or menopause, you're not really sure what to do or say, because the person going through it isn't really sure. Should my periods be more regular now? Why am I having one every 14 days? Why am I still feeling like this? Isn't that what the medication is supposed to fix? And then that's without trying to think about what does intimacy look like.
Yeah.
It's such a, and exactly you said, it affects it affects everybody's mom, everybody's sister, everybody's daughter, everybody's partner,
Yeah.
so half of the world. But we just, it's such an oddity that it isn't talked about just so much. Just yeah, it frustrates me a lot,
Yeah.
and
Me too.
and I'm sure it frustrates you even more. But yeah, just as I'm at this age now, and lots of my friends and their wives and their partners and things, and it's just yeah, there's so little help out there really
Yeah,
for
it's true. And you know, on one hand, we've come a long way because people weren't prescribing HRT even 10
no,
years ago. But
yeah,
it is, again, like I said, it's so vastly underfunded and understudied that
yeah,
just, unfortunately, it is not robust research yet
mm,
regarding this. And I mean, sadly, that is also the way of female funded, female, not female funded, but research on
yeah,
female issues to begin with is very,
yeah.
um, hasn't been really at the forefront of medical research or medical papers and things like that. So, we're slowly getting there, but I mean, it's a crawl for sure. Yeah.
It feels sometimes that the funding bodies or the medical profession almost see it as a, and this is not the right phrase at all, but almost it's a sort of like a lifestyle choice. It's not something that's going to sort of kill you. It's not a disease. It's not an
Mhm.
ailment we need to fix. Therefore, okay, well, we'll leave it. Which,
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's unfortunate, and there are so many people doing good work in this area.
yeah,
Most of them are women.
yeah, which is good. So
Yeah,
it
no,
should be.
it's great. I want people who are experiencing this or will experience this to also be
Mm.
part of the conversation. But I talk to clients about this. You sort of think about it like puberty, right? Your hormones are all
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
going berserk. You don't know which way is up. You're sad one day, you're happy the next. You can't figure out what's going on with your body. I mean, it's just the same thing. Obviously, in reverse, I guess, if you will. But it's a similar um, type of thing that's happening to your body, and yet we expect women. We sort of give a little leeway. Oh, teenagers, they're so crazy, they're so angsty,
Mhm.
they're so temperamental and emotional, and this and that, and women who are going through this are expected to get on with the kids and go to their jobs
Yeah,
and do all the things and just be as if nothing's happening when there's a lot of internal struggle, both physically and mentally and emotionally for
mm.
women of this age. So I'm just really glad people are starting to talk about it more.
And I've talked to women that have gone through it, been through it, or going through it, and for some of them, so they have almost a learning, or they've heard that, well, that's it now. Sex is finished now. That's my
Yeah.
sort of sex life gone, and that's completely not what it is. And like you say, it's just there are some physical changes, and we all know a lot of those. There are obviously some mental and hormonal changes, but people can have incredibly fulfilling sex lives
Oh, for
during
sure.
menopause, after menopause, even better. It's
Yeah.
yeah, that I fear that, gosh, when you hit a certain age, that's it now. It's, my goodness,
Yeah.
that's the thing. And then I think on the other one, on polyamory and open relationships, when I've talked to people on that, and I think it's really good you're looking at this, that one of the things they say is almost the most complicated piece is just figuring out the logistics, or almost the contract,
Yeah.
or what do we so we're happy bringing a man in and a woman. Are we going to get together? Is it completely separate? Do you want to know? Do you not want to know? How many nights a week? What about finances? All that sort of stuff.
Mhm.
So that's where people need the help, is actually, okay, we want to try this, but we don't want to screw it up. So how do we actually organize our lives differently now around this? And I think it's a really, yeah, I think it's something that we'll see more and more, I think.
Yes, for sure. I'm hoping, and I agree completely. It's a lot. I mean, as with everything, communication is the key, right? It's really important,
Hmm.
especially people who are in sort of non-traditional relationship structures, that they're constantly talking about it, and also recognizing that they evolve. Like you said, there are contracts that people can write up and they can change over time.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Hmm. My last question, you've been very generous with your time, would be, so what brings you happiness and joy at the moment?
Hmm. Well, I'm really grateful for my partner and my family and my friends and the people I have around me bring me great happiness and joy. I think for me, the most important thing is connection to other humans. And the older I get, the more important that becomes. And I really think without that, yeah, I'm just not as happy. And I try really hard to, again, I'm human and I mess up all the time, but I try really hard to slow down and really appreciate tiny things
Yeah.
like, the way it tastes when I slowly eat a croissant and how delicious it is, right? Or,
Yeah.
you know, seeing a hummingbird in a tree or like things like that that kind of remind me, oh my God, I'm alive and how great is all this stuff around
Yeah.
me that's happening. So that brings me a lot of joy too. But really, and sex, if I'm being honest. But yeah, those things are all, when you distill it down, those are the things that really get me excited about being alive.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And I'm very, very glad you got through the cancer diagnosis. And you're incredibly brave. Thank you for doing that. And thank you for bringing that to so many people. I just really appreciate your time today, your generosity, and I'm really excited to listen to your podcast and learn how to do it properly. So let me know when it's coming out. I can't wait.
Yeah, I will. Thank you so much for having me. This has been so great.
It's a
I'm really
pleasure.
glad to be here.